Hi, I'm delighted today to welcome David Hall from the Compass Group, UK and Ireland. And we're going to have a little chat about SAP security and authorizations and the use of Soterion for SAP at Compass Group to manage that process internally. Welcome, David. I'm really pleased that you could join us today.
Hello.
I'm great, thank you. I'm good. Tell me a little bit about your role at Compass Group and a little bit about the Compass business for people who kind of don't know who you are and what your business does.
Yeah, sure. So I head up the business solutions team within Compass Group UK and Ireland. That's a part of Compass Group PLC. We've got about 50,000 employees in Compass Group, of which about 2,000 are users of SAP. So until about the last 6 months, I had responsibility for security and risk and compliance. And part of that, I identified the need for us to review our SAP security access controls to stay compliant with both the sort of key IT controls and our key finance controls. Bit of background on our SAP system. We've implemented SAP back in 1997, and over that period, the roles have evolved and people's jobs have changed, and what became apparent across that population of 2,000 users was that we had people who had merged composite roles where they'd gained extra access. Our user population are very good at telling us when they don't have access. They're not particularly good at telling us when they have additional access. So we started doing some manual investigations and identified a lot of extra access and possible segregation of duty conflicts. And really, from a manual point of view, we didn't have the resource or the capability to investigate that any further.
Did you used to use things like spreadsheets and one thing and another to sort of keep a track on that?
Yes, that's a good question. So previously, we engaged a third party who would come in every 6 months, and the process involved them hooking up to our SAP system and extracting all the users' authorization role data out, then also extracting all the sort of transaction usage, so which user had used which transactions. They then that in itself sort of took sort of half a day to pull all that data out. We downloaded it and transferred it over on SFTP, and then they went away in a huddle for a number of weeks and ran it through a third-party system, and then came back about 2 weeks later with spreadsheets with huge amounts of information, hundreds of thousands of lines of data in spreadsheets identifying where we had risks and compliance. That was great, but that only gave us a snapshot of where we were 2 weeks ago. And to be honest, the volume of data we got back, whilst it sort of ticked a box to say we were reviewing it and had the information, it was really too big a volume for us to work through and manage it accurately and take it forward to really make any progress. And we were sending those spreadsheets back out to the business, dividing them up and sending them out to department heads to review, and then having to manually chase data returns from them to confirm they were happy with access, to confirm they would accept it. And that in itself would take a number of months. And we were finding almost by the time we'd finished the first cut of that, this first half of the year, we're almost into the second half where we needed to be reviewing it again because we had an audit requirement to do it twice a year. So that really wasn't a workable solution. We're paying for that as a sort of one-off service each time. And we just felt we needed a tool that we could access ourselves and manage real time and all the time, rather than just as a one-off exercise twice a year.
Sean, I guess when you chose Soterion for SAP, 2 questions really I've got for you. First of all, you know, what kind of input did you get from the stakeholders of that kind of process internally when you said, actually, we're going to start looking for a tool to use internally? And what was the sort of rationale behind choosing Soterion for SAP in the grand scheme of the evaluations?
Yeah, well, we agreed some funding to go away and look for a solution that would make the process easier for us to manage and make us more compliant, and also provide an easier journey and capability for our end users who wanted to needed to sign off on access controls and access segregation of duty conflicts. So we like any project, we documented the requirements, and we went out and actually we came up with two solutions. One actually was a SaaS-based solution of the third-party tool we were using earlier. Then also there was Soterion, which obviously is also a SaaS-based solution. We're particularly keen to choose solutions that sort of take away the administration and maintenance of the software. We don't particularly want to be loading software and patching it and maintaining on our system. So we're very keen to have solutions that integrate seamlessly with SAP and provide us with a low maintenance footprint within our application stack. So from a capability point of view, I think both tools had good capabilities, but I think it came down to usability when we compared Soterion with the other product. When we ran this past the users as well, they found that the sort of the dashboarding capability and the ability to manage, maintain, and send tasks out to users was better. There was also the additional functionality we wanted around elevated rights. So we want to sort of minimize the access we give to users, but we want a capability to provide additional transactions when needed for exceptional cases. And when that elevated access is approved, we can then audit exactly what access and what transactions the users have had. So that was a definite additional benefit that Soterion had over the other product.
I guess, yeah, that's kind of extremely valuable, isn't it? That emergency access, because that when you do that role review, you tend to start removing a lot of the access, and if there is a kind of a requirement for an emergency, then that needs to be kind of governed and controlled and auditable. So I think that was quite useful for Compass Group. I think one of the other things that I'm curious about is, when you talked about we had these spreadsheets and we sent them out to the business and then they had to send them back, and it was this whole 6-month cycle, and then we had to start again. The Soterion solution, does that improve that process for you? Does that give you more control on sending that out to the business to do the review and get that back so you can make any necessary changes? Has that process improved through using Soterion?
Yes. So what we can do when we run the audits, we can against each of the roles, whether it's accounts payable, credit control, payroll, HR, we have some nominated heads of department who then in effect are linked in through the workflow and get an email with a link which allows them to log in to the Soterion solution with the same authorization that they have for their SAP systems. There's no additional user maintenance required, and then they can go through, and it's a tick box, checkbox exercise where they can confirm that the users that have been assigned that role are all valid team members. So if it goes to head of payroll, they'll do a check to make sure that everyone who's got the payroll role is a payroll user and do a checkbox against that, and then they can also confirm the transactions. It's telling them who's used the transaction and is it still being used. So there might be transactions in there that are no longer valid, and they can confirm that that it's not being used, and that the audit's telling them it hasn't been used in the last year or 18 months, and they can confirm that can be removed. It also allows them to do their sort of segregation of duty. So where and like any organization, that there are certain business use cases where segregation conflicts do arise, and you need to accept those, and you might put in some manual controls. So it allows them to confirm the acceptance of that risk, and also document any mitigating controls they might have outside of the system for those particular users where there is a conflict.
It's quite interesting, you know, that the process has improved, but I guess audit will be very happy as well that, you know, this process is controlled and managed and quite visible now. I guess on spreadsheets things are not quite so visible, and if you're managing rows and rows of data in a spreadsheet, it's really hard to see the wood for the trees. But I guess with the graphical interface that Soterion brings you, that's you can spot the things fairly quickly where there are potential, you know, areas for improvement or cleanup or role redefinition.
Yeah, Liz, that's right. Yes, there's a couple of things there. So one is, you know, the dashboarding tells you where you are at the start of the journey and how many conflicts you have, and it then as and when you address those and reduce the conflicts or accept them with mitigating controls, you can see that through the dashboard that you're actually making progress. So, you know, when both our finance teams who have responsibility for this and the external auditors come in, they can see that we are making progress and we are addressing it, and we've got the audit trail and logs to confirm that the heads of department have signed off and accepted the controls and the segregation of duty authorizations that were provisioned. The other area I think that is particularly useful is when we want to change roles. So historically, again, you know, before we had Soterion, we relied on the knowledge and expertise of certain employees to say, should a particular user be given particular access to a transaction? Yeah, that, you know, and it was, that sounds good. Yeah, I don't think that does provide a segregation of duty conflict. We'll give them the access, and then we'll wait for another 3 or 4 months till we actually do our 6 monthly audit and hope that it comes out okay. Whereas now, part of the process of provisioning additional authorizations and transactions, whether it's to users or into the roles themselves, requires the security administration team to run the segregation of duty checks. So straight away it gives them a sort of red, amber, green. You know, green is there's none at all. Amber might be low risk, and red might mean that before we actually provision that, we want the head of department to sign off with some mitigating controls. Outside of that, or potentially, if maybe it's in a project situation, we'll just give the access for a limited period of time just to support project cutover or data loads for a project.
So I guess you've got the governance and the controls in place, and you're removing risk from access and authorization breaches, and I guess that secures your SAP production system adequately, and also not just adequately, but also from a, you know, an audit, external audit perspective. I know they're pretty hot on picking up on stuff like that. It's usually one of the things that drives businesses to look at these types of solutions.
That's right, Liz. And I think that nowadays, you know, the security of our data is absolutely paramount, and we have a lot more controls put into upfront to make sure that when a project lands or, you know, is being implemented, that we've done a full data protection impact assessment, and we're aware of any impacts on personally identifiable information, and what the tool's allowing us to do is just to monitor that throughout. You know, after the project lands, we're doing ongoing monitoring and checking of that. Because very often in the old days, all the checks were done up front when the project landed or the new change of process happened, and then there wasn't an ongoing process to keep an eye on that. So having that real time in the system now, so, you know, as and when any changes go, we can make those checks to make sure our data stays secure, and then there's no risk of people having unnecessary access to the data.
And I guess you've moved from a kind of a reactive model to a fairly proactive model as well, in that process of assigning, you know, authorizations, roles to individual users, whether that's in BAU or for projects. So I guess that's quite valuable to come?
Yes, that's right. Yes, I mean, it is both that and also, you know, we've got 20 years worth of historical data in the system. So, yeah, I have to be honest that we're still working through sort of 18 months, 2 years after implementing Soterion, we're still going through those roles. There are still, you know, risks that need to be addressed, and it's not something that given the size and scale of our system and all the complexity of our roles, you can address in, you know, 3-6 months. It is a journey, but what we are able to demonstrate through the dashboarding is that, you know, we are making progress, and you know, the risk is reducing, you know, year on year as we work through all the access controls and check things out and put in our mitigating controls.
Yeah, I guess that beautiful graph is moving downwards for you. It's amazing when you first look at these things and you run the tool through your access and authorizations, and you get this quite frightening kind of sort of map of the system. But then, like you say, as you move through this, you can see over time where improvements are being made and risks are being reduced or mitigated. So I guess, again, from an audit perspective, not just a operational security and authorizations perspective, that's quite a good measure as well, as you know, for you as an organisation.
It is, yes, and as I said, you know, the auditors come in like any organisation. We have our external auditors come in, and you know, it's evidence-based now, so it's not relying on spreadsheets with emails that people might have sent in, and you know, trying to keep record of those. All the audit data sits within the system, so you know, for any one of the departments, we can go and check the system audit logs, prove that the audits, you know, that the roles have been reviewed, and see there and then what the mitigating controls are, rather than having to rely on a combination of spreadsheets and emails and Word documents that were circulating around before.
And I guess sort of your sort of final tip, if you will, we know that there are lots of organisations that are still doing this thing on spreadsheets. What would your number one tip be to those organisations that are tussling with the same problems that you had 2 years ago before Soterion for SAP?
Yeah, I think I'd understand. You know, you need to understand what we have an extensive list of what we call key IT controls and key financial controls. You need to understand what those are, what the requirements are, both of your internal audit team and also your external auditors, and then be just reviewing that against what your current processes are, and you know, challenging yourselves. You know, hand on heart, are you being compliant, or are you just playing lip service to that process? Yeah. I think, you know, we felt that, you know, before we had Soterion, we weren't really ever on top of it. It was just like painting the Forth Road Bridge. We just seemed to merge one audit into the other, and we were always chasing end users and chasing bits of paper around the organisation to get people to sign off. Whereas now we've got the tooling. I mean, take a look at Soterion. Ask you know, Liz and the team to have a look at it. They'll show you the system and do a demo and just check what its capabilities are. But from our point of view, it's, you know, it's reduced workload in the security team, and that also made us more compliant and reduced our risk profile.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much, David, for your time. It's been really interesting to talk to you. I always enjoy a little chat with you. And we didn't even mention the football today, so that's
that's good. Thank you very much, Liz. Yeah,
Thank
lovely.
you. Take care.
Bye-bye.